is our second session this morning. My name is Jeff Fries. I'm with Zoetis, and just want to just mention that although our name has changed, our commitment to the beef producers, veterinarians, nutritionists, our products and our services remain the same. We're very honored to be able to participate in Cattlemen's College, our 20th year in sponsorship. This morning I have the opportunity to introduce our moderator, Dr. Ron Lemonager. I'm sorry, Dr. Lemonager. Has a research and teaching and extension appointment at the Department of Animal Science at Purdue University. His research and extension programs are integrated and focused on helping producers find system-based solutions that not only improve production efficiency and profitability, but also enhance stewardship of both land and cattle. His research is concentrated on the interaction between nutrition and reproduction in beef cattle and nutritional factors affecting muscle and adipose secretion in feedlot cattle. Dr. Lemonager has taught nutrition, beef management, career planning, and an animal industry travel course. He served as executive director to the 5-State Beef Initiative, where he developed and nurtured relationships between universities, state governments, cattle associations, and the Farm Bureau in the 5-state region. He's been awarded more than $4.9 million in grants to support his programs, published over 60 refereed scientific publications, 90 abstracts, and has numerous publications. And Dr. Lemonager said he's also very proud that he's a 4th-generation rancher. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Lemonager.
This morning's second session is really on credit availability to operate in today's beef industry. The amount of credit that it takes to operate in today's business climate is breathtaking. Bankers representing some of the largest international, national, and local financial establishments will provide new information on credit and credit policies for farmers and ranchers. And with us today, we've got a distinguished panel. Okay, it will be moderated by Randy Block. Randy probably needs no introduction. I think most of us know him. Randy Block is CEO of the CattleFacts, an organization focused on helping member cattle producers to make more profitable marketing and management decisions. CattleFacts is the cattle and beef industry leader on timely market information, analysis, and research. Randy came to CattleFacts in 1981 and served as Director of Market Analysis for 15 years before accepting his current role in 2001. During this time, he has been a keynote speaker at hundreds, and literally hundreds, of cattle and beef industry conventions, meetings, and seminars. A Colorado native, Randy and his family remain actively involved in cattle ranching and cow-calf, stocker, and finished cattle. He was raised on the family's ranch in Yuma, Colorado, and graduated from CSU, Colorado State University, with a degree in animal science. Randy received the Honor Alumni Award from its College of Agricultural Sciences in 2004 and the Livestock Leader Award in 2011. So Randy will moderate, and I will introduce the panel, and then I'll turn it over to Randy. The panel is in no particular order, because I'm not sure exactly which order you guys are going to go in, but Bob Campbell. Bob Campbell is Senior Vice President of Farm Credit Services of America. Bob leads the lending teams who serve approximately 12,000 customers across Nebraska and Wyoming. The customers served in his area represent various industry segments, including cattle, grain, pork, sugar beets, dairy, malt barley, lambs, and wool. In addition, he serves as a senior leader team member for the association. In his role, he works with others to create the association's business development strategies, risk management, and economic capital plans. Farm Credit Services of America is proud to finance the growth of rural America, including the special needs of young and beginning producers. With more than 55,000 customers and assets of nearly $20 billion, Farm Credit Services of America is one of the region's leading provider of credit and insurance services to farmers, ranchers, agribusinesses, and rural residents in Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Bob and his wife Holly live near Lincoln, Nebraska. He's a graduate of the University of Wyoming and has been with the association for 25 years. A second speaker on the panel is Rob Vonderleeth. Rob runs a winter stocker operation in Oakdale, California, and a summer stocker operation in Big Piney, Wyoming. He also works as a field representative for Tri-State Livestock Credit Corporation and has been with the company since 1984. Mr. Vonderleeth served a one-year term as chairman of the California Beef Council and is a member of California's Cattlemen's Association. He continues to work diligently to build a stronger beef industry and increase consumer demand for our products. Rob graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in economics. The third speaker on the panel is Van Dewey. Van is Managing Director and Senior Vice President for Rabo AgriFinance Central Territory. Rabo AgriFinance is a division of Rabobank, the premier bank to the global agricultural industry and one of the world's highest rated privately held banks. A leading financial partner to top U.S. producers and agribusinesses, Rabo AgriFinance adds value to America's most successful operations with leading expertise and client-focused solutions, as well as long-term business relationships. In his role, Van manages 8 states and 40 employees from Texas to South Dakota. He's worked 23 years in ag lending and in management and has been dedicated to Rabo AgriFinance for the last 9 years. Van has been able to build the Central Territory portfolio and staff from the ground up, with a great amount of freedom given to this accomplishment. This experience has made him a better lender and a better leader. Being a part of a prominent international bank, he has a chance to work and learn from other Rabo bankers from around the world and gain a broader international perspective. And with that, help me welcome the panel and Randy as our moderator.
Good morning. Everybody doing all right? We've got a great panel for you today. A lot of things that you want to think about. As we look at this business and you look at how the business has changed for each and every one of us, we think about our operations, whether we're talking about feed yard operations, cow-calf operations, stocker operations, the amount of working capital that it takes today compared to what it did in 2000 is 110%. Pretty much across the board, 110% increase in basically the last decade in the amount of working capital that is required to do the same things that we were doing a handful of years ago. Think about what our real estate prices have done. Some of you have come out and made large acquisitions on additional farms or ranches over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. What were those purchase decisions based on? Were those purchase decisions based on $6 to $7 corn or $4 corn? Were they based on $1.80 calves or $1.30 calves? How much money should banks, lenders loan for cows? All of those are the kind of things that we're going to get to with our panel today. They're each going to give us a very brief overview of what they see going on in their space. And then we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to open this thing up and we're going to get down to the hard questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Campbell to get us running.
It was very brief. Very brief depends on how well I can get out of this thing. Okay, so I can't stall any longer, it looks like. I got it. Okay. I do.
I'm going to move it up a little bit there.
Thanks. So I drew the short straw and came on first, and so we'll get going. they said real brief, and so we just want to give you an overview of some things that we're thinking about as an organization. And so to give you an overview, I'm with Farm Credit Service America based in Lincoln, Nebraska. And as we said, we run in Nebraska, Wyoming, South Dakota, and Iowa. So we've got all the way from the grain production all the way through the cow-calf through the feedlot. So we do the whole thing. We've got about 22% of our portfolio tied up in the cattle industry in one way or the other. The thing we're asking our customers and people we work with is how well are you positioned in the years coming ahead of us? And what we mean by that, if you subscribe to Danny Kleinfelter from A&M, he says in the equilibrium, the top producers are profitable and growing, the average are hanging in there, and the bottom are losing money and exiting the industry. And so as you position yourself in the future, you got to ask, how am I positioned in my industry? Am I a high-cost producer? Am I a middle-cost producer? Or am I a low-cost producer? And how do I know that? How do I figure that out, right? And we've seen this the last couple of years. What can shock our systems? What can shock our operations? You've got the demand-driven side. So on the beef side, we've had tremendous demand for our product, right? Exports are good, dollar's low, consumers are eating it. Cow numbers are down, which means calf numbers are going to be harder to get. So your demand for your product is high, but we've got supply-induced shocks. Last year, we learned a whole new thing of counterparty risk. In 2008, counterparty risk was when the financial crisis hit, will people be around that owe me money, can they still pay me back, or vice versa. Last year was, I've got a contract to have corn delivered in November. What if there's no corn? Doesn't matter if I've got a futures position. What if I can't physically get the corn, or I can't get the hay? So there's a whole new definition of supply-induced risk. How are you managing that? What we see ahead, commodity prices we're going to see rising input prices, cash rents, you've seen it. We will see a compression in production agriculture in the margins. What we're worried about is inappropriate balance sheet structure. So if you're, for instance, and everybody's talking about working capital, and you hear that today a lot, working capital. If you're keeping everything in your line of credit, your equipment purchases, your land purchases, whatever, you're structuring your balance sheet wrong, and it's gonna get you in a jackpot. In today's interest rate cycle, make sure your balance sheet structure is right. Make sure that you're amortizing the things you're buying that are capital, and make sure that you can pay for them. One guy said the other day, in today's world, it isn't how much I can borrow, it's how much I can pay back. And that's really true in today's world, because the balance sheets are really big. You look at the financial statements today, we see equity numbers and numbers on balance sheets that we've never seen before. They're huge. We still got to pay it back, right? So the equity is the last thing on the list. It's working capital and your ability to cash flow. And I ask producers and my teams this: if I make this decision, whatever the decision is, whether I'm buying, I'm selling, or I make the decision to do nothing, that's a decision. What if I'm wrong? And if you can't answer that question, our position is you got some more homework to do. Because you've got to be able to answer the question, what if I'm wrong? Here's the scenario. We follow Inform Economics as one of our groups that we follow, and they've got 3 scenarios out right now. This is a normal year for corn. Could they see corn, if we have a normal year production, we could see corn go to 365. Okay. If we don't have a normal year, we can see corn go to 880. And if we have a really good corn year, it goes down to 345. How do you manage between 345 and 880? I don't know, but substitute corn for hay, substitute corn for alfalfa, substitute corn for any input that you have, or export that you do. How do you manage that volatility? That's what we're talking about. So our thoughts are really pretty simple. Maintain a competitive position, be a low-cost producer in your enterprise. What agriculture needs to do is start running a business like their business. We really encourage our customers, start putting your financials on an accrual accounting system. I said this before in Lincoln, and I got in trouble because I said it wrong. The person thought I said, do your income taxes on an accrual basis. I'm not saying that at all. Do your accounting system on an accrual, and figure out your break-evens from an accrual basis, not a cash basis. You need to take in your inventories and the value of your inventories. Crop insurance, or your risk management. Those are the traditional ones, but the other part of risk management I would offer is make sure you know who you're doing business with and make sure they can deliver to you what you're contracting with them. And we're saying maintain a strong financial position. Working capital is key, and this is not an environment to be highly leveraged in. That would be probably our biggest 2 cents. And finally, I think Benjamin Franklin said it best, your net worth is the world. Your net worth to the world is usually determined by what remains after your bad habits are subtracted from your good ones. And I think it gets that simple. So hopefully that sets the stage for some questions, and we'll get down to that after you hear from these other guys. So thank you.
Rob Vonderleef.
You guys don't mind, I don't have a formal presentation. I feel like I'm talking down to you. I'm going to get down on the floor here. I've been with Tri-State Livestock for 28 years. Our company was founded in 1931 in the Depression, strictly to provide financing for sheep and cattle producers. We have a portfolio in 9 western states, and we're an old school lender. There's 3 of us, myself, 2 other gentlemen. One lives in Arizona, one lives in Eastern Oregon. And we work the country. We do everything at the kitchen table, and all 3 of us are actively involved in the industry on a substantial scale. We're a producer just like you people are. Our board of directors are all livestock producers, and pretty nice philosophy. None of our directors are borrowers of the company, which is pretty unique. Because the worst thing you have to do is do a director loan. I've been there. But anyway, our company, again, we're old school. We go to the ranch, and the way we analyze credit is I have a portable computer with me, and we're big on spreadsheets. As Bob mentioned to you earlier, we look at liquidity, we look at debt to worth, we look at where your equity is in the cows, we look at your break even, and we look at debt service. You can sit there and get so elaborate in ratios. As you remember, when they put the financial Sweet 16, they called it together, we looked at that, and most of you guys, we don't need all those different ratios, and we like to have a spreadsheet where we can sit there with you when we're at the ranch and determine how we did. And the other thing that I believe in financing that a lot of banks don't provide today is personal relationships. I have a lot of people I've worked with for the 28 years I've been with the company. And people that we work with like the privacy aspect. We go to the ranch, we do everything, we don't charge you for it. We can go home, the neighbor doesn't know you're there. And as opposed to somebody has to go into town and sit down and everybody knows you're in town doing that. The other thing that we are very strong believers in, and I notice there's a lot of young people in the room, are starting young people out. I did a loan the other day with one of my customers. I've had him for 26 years. The first loan I made to him was a $5,000 loan. He had 6 cows, 2 good horses, and a pickup. And he was a rancher. Today he has 800 cows, and his line of credit is $500,000. And nobody would have. At the time, his first loan, I think the interest we generated was $263, but I'm a big believer in providing financing for young guys because most banks, a lot of banks will just look at strictly the yield on who the operator is, what they're going to make, but we look at a long term, and you take a guy like that, I'd known him, he'd been a cowboy for a number of years, that there's a long term goal with him and nobody would have touched him. But essentially, I wanted you guys to know that there is a company out there that lives, breathes, eats, drinks, and sleeps the livestock industry. And again, we're sheep and cattle. I have a lot of sheep loans. And the other thing is we have a lot of public land people that we work with, which a lot of banks don't understand that concept. So we have public land operations. We have operations in Hawaii. We have operations in California and wintergrass stalker operations. So we do the whole gamut. As far as feedlot financing, we don't like to do feedlots. That's not really our bread and butter. We're here to offer service to the real producers of this country. And I look forward. I'd rather just let you guys hammer away and field questions to me, and we'll see if we can answer them for you. And thank you for letting me be here today.
Thanks, Bill. Van Dewey.
I think I'm going to rely on on John to help me get started because I can't run a computer. Thank you, John. Well, good morning, everyone. I guess my message to you guys is there's plenty of money out there to lend, so no worries there. There's tons of money in all of the banks and all the farm credits to lend. The news is the rules haven't really changed. So the fundamental basics of loaning money to a cattleman have remained the same. But what's changed is the commitments are bigger. So when we talk about working capital requirements, that has changed, but the ratios haven't. So really nothing has changed. The rules are the same. The credits are just much, much bigger. So fundamentals are important, and Bob talked about a lot of the same things I'll talk about, and so did Rob. So bankers all sort of sound alike, don't we? I'm with Rabo AgriFinance. We're an American organization owned by a Dutch bank, and so we come to you with a lot of capital, a lot of balance sheet strength, and quite frankly, a lot of money to lend. So again, I think the message to be to the cattle guys is there's plenty of money to lend. What I want to really talk about quickly, and I know Randy said speed it up, and I talk pretty slow because I'm from southern Kansas, but financial considerations, managing risk, financial statement standards, and future outlook. Those are the things I'm going to touch on real briefly. Current situation, we've got, like the bankers are saying, we've got working capital requirements higher than ever. We've got increasing costs of feed, equipment, land. They're running 2 times what they were 4 years ago. The size of our loans are increasing. In 2010, 2011, we had organic growth in our portfolio off of cattle credits running somewhere between 50 and 80%, just trying to keep up with feeder cattle costs and corn costs. So we were very, very busy servicing those existing credits, trying to stay ahead of the cost of corn, the cost of cattle, trying to keep our guys with enough commitment level so they could operate. And we were very, very busy. It put us in I've been in this business 23 years. I've never seen anything like that. It was a ton of fun. We put on a lot of new commitments, and it was fun, but yet at the same time, kind of scary when you look at the size of the credits. But then what we did is we went back to the basic fundamentals of lending, and we found that we were operating exactly where we always have. It's just the commitments got bigger, right? So it's okay. We use a lot of borrowing-based concepts. One of the things that I was asked is, how does Rabo loan money to cattle guys? And we use a borrowing base, and many of you are used to that. If you're not, you probably will as your credits get bigger and bigger. Lenders tend to like that. Puts everyone on notice, generally monthly, of how the position of the loan is. And also, it's a great tool financially for you guys to watch the collateral margin within that borrowing base, what the change is month over month. It's really a measure of working capital. So if the working capital is getting better month over month within the borrowing base, you're probably making a little money. If it's going backwards, then you're probably losing a little money. And so it just kind of keeps everyone, the banker and the borrower client, on the same page. Debt to asset levels that we look at, just a simple, basic, fundamental measure. When we're doing cropping deals, we tend to stay at less than 50% leverage. Feedlots, somewhere's around 75%. Those can change pretty dramatically depending on the structure, but that's a pretty good standard. Ranching, less than 50%, and swine, less than 65%. Those are just basic fundamental leverage ratios that I think most of us lenders use. Financial considerations. Manage your capital expenditures. Like Bob was saying, if you don't structure that CapEx or capital expenditures properly, it'll have a pull on your working capital. And you need, cash is king. We preach that all the time. So protect your working capital, protect your liquidity. Liquidity will get you through tough times. So when you get in a bind from a cash flow standpoint, due to industry changes, not every farm's going to make money every year, right? So when you get into a situation where you're losing a little money, You want that working capital to be pretty flush so you can get through those times. So watch how you structure your CapEx, and CapEx is real estate purchases, machinery purchases, anything longer term. Watch your repayment. How are you going to pay the loan back? Do you have enough cash flow to handle your debt service? And then I always ask our borrowers, what's your fallback plan? If you have a cash flow shortfall, what are you going to draw on, or what's going to be your fallback? So what's plan B? And maybe even what's plan C? And maybe even what's plan D? So always give yourself plenty of room to wiggle as you do your financing. So don't get yourself in a situation where you got no options. So manage that. A balanced balance sheet, that sounds really simple, but we oftentimes don't see balance sheets properly structured. And so it's really aligning the asset with the debt. So if you've got long-term purchases that are showing up in your operating line, similar to what Bob mentioned, you probably need to get those out into long-term debt so you keep that working capital position nice and flush. Financial covenants, that is a question that comes up oftentimes. Why do we need them? What are they for? And my answer to that is, and coach your banker on this, oftentimes bankers have a list of 12, 14 covenants that they routinely like to use. I think what we all ought to focus on is what's really important from a covenant, and why do we have that covenant? And so coach the banker and coach the client on what it is we're trying to protect, and that's what a covenant's all about. So I really look at a covenant as an early indicator of potential trouble. So let's set a covenant at a level that both the banker and the client can see there's potential trouble coming, and then let's have a meeting and talk about it ahead of the trouble. So it's really a proactive approach. That's how I see covenants. Balanced approach on the 5 factors. All of us guys here in this panel have been, this has been drilled into us. We go to bed at night thinking about the 5 C's of credit. So character, capital position, cash flow, collateral, and loan structure. Those all need to be in balance if we're going to do a credit. So if we have a weakness in any one of those 5, there's got to be a mitigating factor why we're going to do it. And so you got to have some strength and the other ones to offset one of those. So these are really simple. These are 5 factors we use on every loan. And your banker, if he doesn't know what he's doing, he's really using those 5. He may not realize it, but those 5 drive nearly every credit decision, irregardless of which bank you go to. So if you get focused in on those, that's really what's driving your banker, is those 5 C's. You say, well, one of them starts with an L, so where's the C at? Conditions is the 5th one. So bankers really aren't all that mysterious. Right there's what drives us every day. What does RTP mean? Risk tolerance policy. This is something that we really take a long look at. What are we doing as a client and as a bank to protect the borrower from industry downturns? And so, the way we look at the borrower is if we can keep the borrower healthy and in good financial condition, guess what? We'll get to finance both him, his kids, his grandkids, and great-grandkids, and so on and so forth. So we really look at a borrower as a long-term client. So we really want to do generational lending is really where we're coming from. So it works really well for both of us if we keep you healthy, because then you'll keep coming back borrowing more money, and we get to make money, we get to pay salaries, and we get to keep going. If we don't do a good job of sustaining our client base, we'll be out of business, right? So you guys are a shrinking pool of clients. There's not many of you. And so if we're not real careful about really sustaining the business that you're in through what we do with you, we'll all be out of a job. And I've got some years to go before I retire, so I want to keep you guys going. So it's really a symbiotic relationship between the banker and the client. And, if the banker doesn't realize that, that's the truth. We need each other. It's the bottom line. So how do we manage? Oh, there we go. So how do we manage risk? So, you know, I did this as an illustration because I like pictures. And so you got Brett up here. You know, he's a gunslinger. He's high risk. You know, he's looking for high risk, but then he gets a lot of high return, right? So there's some of you that operate that way, and that's okay. I mean, if you're going to operate that way, what we always say is have a big balance sheet and self-insure, because you're going to have huge volatility in your business because you operate that way. And if that's your business model and it's been working for you, perfect. But what we generally see with this, if you're a Brett Favre and you operate this way, generally speaking, you better have a big balance sheet, because you're going to go through huge swings in your business model. You make a lot of money, lose a lot of money. Make a lot of money, lose a lot of money. And your banker's going to get nervous about that, so he's going to look at your balance sheet and go, okay, I can live through that because he's got a big balance sheet. The next guy, well, maybe. Okay, there we go. So Tim Tebow. Tim is an emotional leader. He's a fiery leader. He's very emotional, but gosh, he always pulls it out in the end, right? He's always makes it happen in the very end. And so we have those kind of clients too. And that's fine, but a lot of emotion-driven decision-making, not a lot of business-based decision-making. And those guys, those are generally speaking, if your business model is built around that and that's your style, bankers can live through that, but again, it makes you nervous. And then if we look at Peyton Manning, probably, honestly, guys, if we could pick a quarterback that the banks would like to bank, it would be Peyton, because he's a strategic planner. He has all the options. He knows what A, B, C, D is. If something goes haywire, he's got some good backup plans. And he makes adjustments in the game, during the game. And that's what we see really successful clients is they're always tweaking that business model to adjust it to the times, right? So just because it's always worked forever doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. So need to be always adjusting. So he makes the most of his opportunities. He takes a look at what is put in front of him, and he makes adjustments, and he makes makes opportunities out of those. There's our star quarterback, if you're a banker. If we look at managing risk, we look at counterparty risk, commodity product risk, interest rate risk, information risk, and again, put it in writing. And that can really apply, probably is really mainly applying to contracts that you have with third parties. Get it in writing. That can go many, many directions, but in today's world, I'm not sure a handshake's really going to work in a lot of cases, so get it in writing, especially if you have huge counterparty risk. Can they pay you back? And do you know if they can pay you back? And how do you know if they can pay you back? And bankers can help you in that regard. Financial statements. Bob talked about this, and this is one of our key areas as well. If you really want to know the truth, the factory at a bank works much, much better with accrual financial statements. We can get your deal in and out very, very fast, very efficient. You give us market-based financials and a set of tax returns, and in our world, the wheels slow way down because we don't understand the information all that well, and neither do you, quite frankly. If we ask you, you struggle with it too. So if we can get to accrual financials, we really come to a common financial set of standards that everyone can understand. The borrower understands it, the bank understands it, CPA understands it. We can really begin to understand whether the guy's making money or losing money. So it's hugely important. I don't know that we, as far as how Rabobank looks at it, if you're borrowing between $0 and $3 million, we're okay with borrower-prepared financials, cash basis accounting. But I can tell you, as you continue to borrow more and more, we're going to move you towards accrual. So we'll look at compiled financials, reviewed financials, and the ultimate is an audit, and we see that mainly in our feed yard customers. due to the inventory change, we'll do audits for those. The main purpose of accrual financials is really just understanding whether you're making any money or not and why the net worth changed. And that's the biggest purpose. And as a good businessman, you ought to be really interested in all that. As far as future, volatility is going to be here, in our opinion, forever. So because of volatility, producers and lenders need to talk all the time. And you need to focus on your business model. Is it continually in your mind as far as is the business model that you're in successful? Is it working? And if it isn't, make adjustments. Hedge to gain more consistent margins. We're really looking all the time with our clients about what's your historical profit margin? What's it always been? And how do we maintain that and maybe make it bigger? And by hedging, you're not going to hit a home run all the time. Neither are you going to lose. You're going to hold a consistent margin of profitability. And that's really what we're aiming for. And with a very volatile world, if you can come to your bank and show consistent margins, they're going to love you with the volatility we have. Preserve the liquidity. Cash is king. Keep your profit margins stable. And one of the areas that we don't talk a lot about, but I think it's top of mind with all of our clients, is what's the succession of the business? Who's going to take over? And we can really do a lot of estate planning with attorneys and those kind of folks can help us transfer the assets without any tax implications. But what our clients are really worried about is how do I transfer what I know to my kids? I had one client tell me, I sent my kid to university, he came back dumber than when he left. And there's a little bit of truth to that in that I think our young folks go away and they got the theory, right? But they come back to the operation and they don't really know how to run the darn thing. And I think our expectations are when we send them to college and they come back, they'll know how to run it. And they don't. And so there's a big area, there's a gap in there where why are you doing what you're doing? And in most cases, producers and ranchers are doing this for the next generation. So if you're not thinking about that, that's a big area to focus on. And it's top of mind. Probably every one of you in this room are thinking about it because that's what really gets you up in the morning, right? Is to make it better for the next generation. I would guess that's the driver in most cases. As far as unlocking your potential, we're a high-capacity lender. We got food and agribusiness research. We have insights both near-term and far, and we have knowledge that can impact your business. We give a client a chance to prepare for the future, and we understand your business and ambitions. And I'll cut it off there.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thanks, man. Okay. We have about 10 minutes left here, and I want to open the floor up to questions. We've got this group assembled. Let's let them have it. Let's get some of the questions answered that are on your minds. Who's first? Just stand up. I'll repeat the question. Come on, let's get it rolling.
There we go. So in Iowa, we're seeing a lot of guys look at cattle confinements, bolt-on slats, monoslope buildings, hoop barns. Who's involved in those operations? What do you like to see? The hog industry did a great job with getting their construction financed based on construction costs. The cattle industry is struggling to get that done.
We're seeing some of that. I toured one here a few weeks ago, and what was interesting was that most of the family still had the feedlot, but one brother went off on his own and put the building. I think it created a divide in the family. They're not sure it's going to work. I think you just got to look at it and say, how do I get to my cost? And you mentioned the swine industry, but they're very good at managing their cost down to a penny or less. We're not there in the beef industry yet, and I think you've got to have that kind of information to have that kind of intensity. And if you can show that kind of information and the risk management that goes with it, I think that there's a model there that we need to look at, especially as land gets more expensive. The price to run on this ground is getting outrageous. So we might have to put more pounds of beef out on fewer acres. So it's an industry we need to look at, but we've got to get way better at managing our
our cost structures, my opinion.
What's real
Yeah, and I'm so short, I'm going to stand up. But
We take that out.
okay, this makes a booming noise. Okay.
We turn that down a little.
Yeah. You know, that really what you're looking at is trying to concentrate the number of cows into a smaller unit, right? And trying to offset the cost of buying high-priced grass. And that's really, yep. So, you know, K-State, I'm a Kansas State grad, so K-State looked at that some time ago, and I think some of the other universities, probably University of Nebraska's looked at it as well. Really, you know, you look at the dairy industry, that's a pretty decent model for potentially what we could do. So they've concentrated a huge amount of cows in a small land base. So I think we could probably learn a lot from the dairy guys as it regards that. And could we get some efficiencies on the turns? Can we get the calf through the feed yard even faster because of that? I think so. So it's a very interesting concept. I think we got a ways to go, but yeah, I mean, and you know, as far as benchmarking performance of that business model, we'll probably take a look at the dairies and see what they've done there to give us an idea. So I don't know if that helps. Yeah.
Next question.
Touched on the feeder calf and the finished product. I'm from Missouri. Really, I'm not a rancher. You don't have many ranchers in Missouri. We're more farmers, and we're competing with the row croppers. I mean, there's land selling for $6,000 an acre in our state, and it's not worth $2. But because the commodity prices are, where should we as cow-calf producers draw the line on what we're going to give if we want to expand? I mean,
The question is, what can we afford to pay for a cow? With what has gone on in here with the land values around the country, what can we afford to pay for a cow? And how much will these lenders up here loan on a cow? Rob, let's start with you.
We don't
Grab
like
that
to.
mic.
Okay, can you guys hear me? For years, we used to be, I go back, as I said, almost 30 years, and we used to have a value of a cow at about $450, which if you went back up until about 10 years ago, if you looked at the trend, that was kind of the running value of the cow. And we never wanted to have more than 70% or $300 debt per cow. Now, when things have changed, we're kind of looking at between $800 and $1,000, which is more of your salvage value of a cow. And we like to not be more than 70% of that. And the other thing we look at is a 20% debt reduction annually, which is a 5-year payout on a cow, which I think is pretty much a standard. And the problem you get into is, as I mentioned earlier, when I go to the ranch and we have our spreadsheet, I always like to keep the cows at the same value. We change the value of the stocker cattle, but if you change the value of the cow every year, it distorts the equity of the margin of the operation and what's truly happening. So all of my older customers I've had, we've kind of kept the values the same on the cow, but on any new customers, we'll look at between $800 and $1,000 and go from that basis.
you want to know how much you pay for the land.
Yeah.
For the land, well,
I mean, that correlates into what.
see, and in our area, what we're dealing with, where I am in California, our winter pasture right now goes for about $1,300 to $1,500 an acre. But we're competing with all the almond and the walnut people that are paying between $6,000 and $10,000 an acre. So it's the same scenario. And if you look at the cash rents against the winter feed, it's about a 5% return. Okay, so and in answer to your question, if a guy if he can satisfy all of our underwriting standards and make the repayment capacity, but you can't go much more than $1,300 on the ground. And I'm sure you have the same issue there. Yeah. Does that kind of answer your question? Does that help, or did I?
What kind of percentage or something is he talking about for your production in that area? Every area is different on what they can pay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I don't know in your.
You know, we can run it. I talked to gentlemen, they run one cow for 300 acres. you know, we can, throughout the year, a cow to an acre, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But still, the price of the land, I just, how can we run?
Well, in our area, it's 8 acres for a cow. So there you go. Look at your cost.
You know, I had a guy one time, when I was in Wyoming, there was a big land auction at Laramie, and some feeders out of Nebraska came over, and I was listening to them on the pasture, and they were looking at summer pasture. And everybody's like, what are you going to bid an acre? And he's like, no, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to bid per pound. He was trying to figure out his gain per pound, and then he was factoring that into how much am I going to bid on this ground based on what I think I can get for gain on these yearlings before I put them back in the feedlot. And that was an interesting concept for me at the time, because in my early days I was purely cow-calf, but I had a feedlot guy coming out trying to buy summer grass. And I thought that was a very interesting twist on it, and I think you still got to do that. Will this land market stay where it is? We get down to sub $4 corn and we get back to normal production, and that or sub $5 corn, I think this land backs off. Where's that position the cattlemen? I think the cattle picture is more bullish because of the cow numbers. So maybe right now you keep your powder dry a little bit and just be patient, and don't overcommit. Or if you're going to expand, don't expand so much that those cows have to pay off a ton of debt for now. Just be patient. Let's let this corn market shake out is probably what I'd say, because that's what's driving the bus. Right or wrong, it is, right? That's who you're competing with in your country and a lot of my country, and certainly in Iowa where these guys are talking about. You're competing with $10,000 and $12,000 crop ground and corn farmers that have a lot of money right now.
I just remind you all that corn prices since 2004 have advanced 300%. So to put it in perspective with what Bob is talking about here, we need to make sure we keep a perspective there. Next question.
I was interested, you said you're bullish on the cow-calf side. You got the same sentiment for the feedlot side, because it doesn't look so rosy from where I sit.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're buying the calves now. You buy the calves, but your corn prices come down. I think it all, it's all going to factor in. But driving the bus right now, assuming we get rain, and everybody's got to do their rain dance tonight before you go to the bar, right? We get some rain, and with the cow numbers down to historic lows, that's the part of the beef industry that's probably as bullish as anything, if it rains.
But how does that account for the overcapacity in the feed yard? I mean, I understand the numbers are going down.
Yeah.
But if you got an overcapacity, that doesn't make the feedlot more profitable.
No. You're going to have to, that's exactly right. I think that going forward, and I'm not the only one, maybe I'll make some people mad on this, but I think we're going to see another round of consolidation in the industry. If we can't find more cattle to feed, and we've got all this unused space, what are you going to do with it?
Van, you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, what I'm seeing in our feed yard industry is there is consolidation going on, but there's also people that have found a way to manage their margins consistently. And those are going to be the ones that survive. So they're going to make a profit year in and year out because they've discovered a way to manage their profit margins year over year over year.
How are they doing that?
They're doing it through a combination of risk management. They're also looking at alternative sources of feed, alternative types of feed, so they're lowering their overall cost. They're also looking at feeding different kinds of feeder cattle. And a great example is Mexican cattle or Holstein cattle. So and then they're doing a combination of, now they're moving into owning land, ranches, and trying to lower that overall cost of gain by grass. So and that's what I say in my presentation. I know I talked too long, but really what I was trying to say there is always take a peek at your business model, because what worked in the past is probably not going to work in the future with the volatility. And that's the guys that are going to survive, is they're always tweaking the business model.
A model that I think through, and I call it the Nebraska model just because that's where I'm at mainly, and it worked in the swine industry, but it's also in the feedlot. In most of our area, behind every feedlot or any kind of livestock integrator, there's some kind of a corn base behind it. And so like one guy said, I've never sold $6 corn, but I've never sold $1.80 corn either, because they run all their corn through their livestock operation. And so the question is, for those guys is, how do you balance that? But if you're open to the market on all your feedstuffs and all your inputs, say for a feedlot, your calves, and you don't have at least a corn base behind you, I think that ups the ante on your risk management, and because you're buying and selling. And you got to have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week focus on, because the market gives you this much time today to make a decision. With the Board of Trade open, 23 hours a day now or whatever, you only got this much time to make some pricing decisions that could impact you for this turn. And it just raises the notch.
Question back here.
Words mean something. I think you need to be careful with words like contraction. You know, we're not consolidating, we're contracting in feed yardage. There are fewer producers, there are fewer active yards. That's not consolidation, guys, that's contraction.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
They mean different things. When you use them, you just can't throw them around.
No, that's a good point.
We have a lot of young people in the room, and I thought there was a point that was made, how do we get this next generation into the business? I'd like to have each of our panelists, we've got to be brief because we've got to shut down this panel, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you're seeing, some creative ideas that we can make it an opportunity for these folks.
As I mentioned earlier, we're very big on starting young people out, and a lot of times we'll have the existing rancher maybe give some cows to a sibling, get them started with their equity base so they don't have to put out that capital outlay, which most young people don't have. But we're very big on small loans and getting people started, and if they unfortunately they have to satisfy our 5 underwriting standards to do that. But size doesn't matter. As I mentioned earlier, I had a $5,000 loan years ago. So
good. Thank you.
There's a couple programs out there that we really like, and it started at, one is at Curtis, Nebraska, the 100 cow program, and the concept there was if you can get a young person started on, say, ranching, and instead of just paying them wage, let them bring in some of their cows. You know, maybe reduce your cow herd a little bit, let them have an equity stake in the ranch, and over years, if it works out, maybe you work on a transition plan where over time they buy the ranch over time, and over the years they add more cows, you take more cows down as you retire. Wyoming came up with a program called Wagon they're trying to match landowners that maybe don't have succession plans or don't have a family that wants to come back with young producers who want to get started, and they're trying to get that conversation going around how do we do this? How do I become an equity partner, but knowing that as a young producer, I've got time, I've got energy, I've got labor. My labor's pretty cheap, but I don't have the capital. You've got the capital. How do we marry the two concepts and work this out? And how do we get into a written agreement maybe over time, not day one, once you feel good about each other's philosophies? But there's a couple programs there that I think are really could be groundbreaking, but it's going to change the mentality of how we do this. And but you got to come in from an equity standpoint, I think. So,
Van, finish us up.
Yeah, the way I look at it is most of you guys are interested in a family business, and so how do we bring in the next generation? There's got to be in that analysis with your kids, do they want to do it, first of all? And then if they do, then I think you got to develop a business plan. Just sit down with your kids and say, how are we going to get you to where you want to be? Because I still believe the majority of you guys in this room, that's why you get up every morning, is to make that business bigger and better for the kids. So.
To comment to that, though, you all, as bankers, have to realize when I sent my son to the bank to get his first operating loan, you don't reflect back on me and say, well, Craig will pay it if Todd won't. That kind of thing. That's the position we find ourselves in, sitting out here as 60-year-old, 65-year-old generation, is that you have a tendency to look backwards. You want to look back and say, well, Dad can pay for it if Junior can't. I don't want it to.
No.
I want it to be balanced
No.
on the merit of what my son presented to you,
Right.
not what you think I might be able to pay. I think you guys are all guilty of going back to Dad and saying, Dad will pay it. And so consequently, if I say, no, I won't, I'm not part of this deal, this is his deal, you say, well, then I'm not interested.
We have to wrap this session up. There's another one waiting to come in. Let's thank our panel. I think all of our panel members will be available for one-on-one questions. We'll probably take those out in the lobby area here in the next few minutes. And over lunch. They'll be available for more questions over lunch. Thank you. Nice job, guys.
Hey, thanks.
Very good.
Yep.